While the world was still being explored, maps often showed the vaguest borders of lands that were labelled Terra Incognita, literally unknown lands. There are still some countries that are Terra Incognita to me and perhaps to you, even if their borders are accurately shown on Google Maps. There's a cluster of countries in Central Asia which all have names ending in stan. They're sometimes known as the stans. There are 7 of them on this map. They're all places where Christians are persecuted. We know something about the bottom 2, Pakistan and Afghanistan, but what about the other 5? Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, and by far the biggest of them, Kazakhstan. That one's almost as big as Argentina and not far short of India. But to us, they're largely terra incognita. These 5 all used to be part of the Soviet Union. It's left its mark. They're all traditionally Muslim countries, but they are not strict about their religion, unlike in Afghanistan, which the Soviet Union never conquered. They're often just cultural Muslims. Like you get lots of cultural Christians in the UK who want to get married in church, but otherwise they wouldn't go anywhere near a church. Whether they are observant or not, many Muslims of Central Asia still persecute Christians, especially those who convert from Islam to Christianity. They often have to keep their faith secret. The state also persecutes. And there's a lot of similarities in how Christians are treated in these 5 countries. Take Tajikistan, for example, even though the state is secular, not Muslim. Only state-sanctioned religious activities are allowed, and though the Russian Orthodox Church is tolerated, Protestants are seen as extremists. By law, the state can demand pretty full reports from religious organizations about their activities. A 2011 law prohibits all religious youth work, and just a couple of years ago, Tajikistan introduced new punishments like 3 years in prison for underground religious education of children. And under the cover of preventing extremism, the authorities cracked down on believers, including restrictions on weddings and on funeral banquets. Funeral arrangements can get disrupted, whether by the state or at the hands of Muslims. We know from our own experience how carefully funerals are planned, sometimes a long time in advance. My uncle bought a plot in a cemetery so that he and my aunt could be buried near her parents in the town where she grew up. Just like Abraham in securing the cave of Machpelah for Sarah and himself, and for his descendants, Isaac and Jacob. Indeed, Jacob's body was carried back from Egypt to the family tomb a couple of 100 years after his death. The location and the family association was important, and to many people it still is. Some people want to be buried with their own kind. So, for example, there are Jewish cemeteries like in Bushey, not too far away from our church. And on Cannock Chase there are 2 cemeteries side by side. One contains Commonwealth war graves, the other has German war graves. Soldiers and airmen joined with their own kind. The location of a grave can be important to both the deceased and to the family. Perhaps more important than the arrangements for the service or the reception. Hear how funeral arrangements were disrupted somewhere in Central Asia.
rural part of Central Asia, Ruslan has been involved in pastoral ministry for over 16 years. Most Christians there are secret believers, and Ruslan must make sure his visits do not raise suspicions.
Let's say that we arrive late in the evening in a very simple, inconspicuous car. Because when you drive into a village by car, already people's interest is raised. And therefore, it's safer if it's an old car, and we slowly enter the village in the evening. Our worship takes place without clapping our hands. Everything is done quietly and decently. And we sit at the table as if we are drinking tea. This is the way we have fellowship.
When people are known to be followers of Jesus, they may face discrimination at work, at home, and even in death, as Muslims believe that Christian burials would desecrate their cemeteries.
There was one time when a brother passed away, and we wanted to bury him in one village, but the whole village rose up and said, "We won't let you." Then we started the burial process in another village, where there was a Christian cemetery. We started digging in that cemetery, and I remember then that there were 6 or 7 of us pastors, and I saw a large number of people coming toward us. I remember then we stood shoulder to shoulder with shovels and readied ourselves because we thought that we would be stoned. And they said, "You cannot bury this man here." We came the next day and the grave was filled in. They simply filled it in and did not let us bury the body there. Then the head of local government said, "I was warned, if you value your life, don't let them bury this man here." So we had to bury him in a third village.
Ruslan himself has first-hand experience of the pressure placed on his family and ministry.
In our house, the windows were systematically broken. It's good that they haven't set fire to it yet, but they would break our windows. And I remember that for a year or more there were cars parked in front of our house. The cars would change, but they were always ones with tinted windows. And in the side windows there were very small holes for the camera. It was obvious that there were cameras. They were filming because I'd already received 2 warnings from the authorities to stop my ministry.
Thankfully, Open Doors has been standing with Pastor Ruslan for several years, giving spiritual, practical and prayer support to him and the Central Asian believers.
When we ask you to pray for one need, this prayer request will be spread throughout Europe through Open Doors. It will be distributed to many thousands of believers who will be on their knees to pray for it. This is the feeling that you are not alone. It gives you vigor. It encourages and supports you. It gives you an understanding that you are part of such a large Christian family that, at the most difficult moment, they will come to support you. This is a great encouragement.
Give thanks to God for Ruslan's faithful ministry. Pray for God's sustenance and protection as he travels around to teach in the rural house churches. Pray for secret believers whose family and even partners are often not aware of their conversion. Pray that they may have wisdom to know when and how to share about their Christian faith. Thank God for the work of Open Doors in the region, providing Bibles and discipleship training, as well as microloans to enable Christians to set up their own small businesses.
I leave the points for prayer with you. You might also like to pray for unhindered opportunities for teaching youngsters about Jesus. I leave you with a few verses from Psalm 119, which Ruslan had open in the Bible on his lap. Remember your word to your servant, for you have given me hope. My comfort in my suffering is this: your promise preserves my life. The arrogant mock me unmercifully, but I don't turn from your law. I remember, O Lord, your ancient laws, and I find comfort in them.